God has specifically chosen you to be here at this time and in this place. You have incredible potential, purpose, and calling to push back the darkness and be a light for Christ. Stand for nothing and you'll fall for anything. It's time to stand your ground. This is Unapologetic. Hi everyone, welcome to Unapologetic. I'm so excited because today I am interviewing my friend Heather MacFadyen, and she is the founder and the author of Don't Mom Alone and the podcast. She does that as well. She just does all kinds of things, but it is a wonderful episode. We talk about how to find community as a mom, how to have good friendships, deep friendships, lasting friendships, and healthy friendships, which is not, of course, exclusive to those of us who are mothers. So I am so excited about this episode because we have a great time and it's fun. It's easy to listen to, but also it's full of so much wisdom from Heather, biblical wisdom. So be encouraged, be excited, and know that God has you in this phase of life for a reason, but also for you to invite others in and to be a part of your community. I know that you will enjoy today's episode. Hey, Heather. I'm so excited you're here.
Oh, it's fun. I mean, this friendship is like my new favorite thing.
Yes. Maybe we should talk about that.
Yeah, because
how did we become friends?
We interviewed the same person on the same day.
Yes.
And so she posted that.
Yes.
And then I happened to be speaking at a MOPS that it was your first week
Yes.
to join.
Because I just really needed
Because
what you're
you
going to
knew
talk about with
that-
us today.
Yes, you were already sold. You're like, yes, I need mom friends. So
Yes,
let's do
absolutely. Okay, so we'll get to that in a minute. We are both in Dallas. We both have podcasts, and we both really care about this generation, of course, of moms and young adults and making sure that they're finding community and being real. So before we get into that, first question always.
Okay.
What do you wish Christians would stop apologizing for?
The thing that I tell them they don't have to apologize for is when we're in a conversation and the emotion comes out in their eyes and they're crying and they'll say, I'm sorry. And I always will respond with, oh my goodness, it is such an honor that you would trust me with what's going on in your heart. Because people will say, oh, I'm sorry I'm being emotional. I'm like, everyone has emotion, and expressing it is part of being made in the image of God. And when we let other people see that, what a gift to the person you're with, that you feel safe enough to do that.
Okay, I told you I was saving a story until we were recording because you did a fantastic job on Friday.
Oh, thank
MOPS.
you.
That's what this is actually sponsored by MOPS. No, I'm just kidding. It's not. But you did a great job. You told us about why we need community and why we need to be vulnerable and how we can find that. And I think for me, I may cut this. I don't know how real I want to be on it. No, I'm just kidding. But for me, I already know that. I know that we need to be vulnerable. I know that I need community. I know that. I've tried so many times and tried to change the culture and the nature of relationships and tried to bring more authenticity. And then maybe it's like, well, maybe I'm just supposed to lead that and help other people find it. For me, listening to your talk, I already knew that. And so just being real, it's, for me, almost at the point of, am I just going to keep trying? Just keep trying. And I think that you really, I'm going to have you say your quote about rejection, because some rejection is really obvious.
Yeah.
And then some is like, am I just going to keep trying to have real relationships?
Yeah.
What do you say about rejection?
I think that oftentimes, whether it's I know I should, but I'm just exhausted from doing it, or I've tried and it's failed, there are all these fears or lies or beliefs that keep us from taking the risk again. Yeah. Because vulnerability is taking the risk you're going to get hurt. And some of that hurt is they're not willing to be authentic too. And so is there something wrong with me that I desire that? And so it's worth the risk of rejection to pursue authentic, vulnerable connection.
One more time.
It's worth taking the risk of rejection to pursue authentic, vulnerable connection because Jesus did it. He went first. You know, over and over in the New Testament, writers in the letters Paul wrote, and then Jesus himself talked about the one another verses, is what we call them, living life with one another.
Yeah.
And in John 13:34, Jesus said, "A new command I give you, love one another." So it's not a suggestion. And then he ups the ante. This is where the authentic, vulnerable connection comes in. He says, "As I loved you,
Wow.
love one another." And you grew up in the church. I grew up in the church. We know the Jesus stories.
Yeah.
How did he love us? I mean, I think back even to Isaiah 53. I've been studying that recently. And the prophet is saying what's going to happen to Jesus. This is hundreds of years before he shows up on the scene and risks rejection. It says in past tense, prophetic perfect tense, I found out this week and I studied.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That he was despised and rejected by men. It's in past tense because it's so assured that it's going to happen.
Wow.
So he left heaven, took on a vulnerable baby's body, knowing the future held being despised and rejected.
Right.
And he was vulnerable on the cross. He was vulnerable with people that the world was rejecting at the time. I mean, he over and over risked rejection. He knew it would happen.
Right.
And he still went in vulnerably, but with strength, you know, as God.
Why? Why do you think
Because
he did that?
of his love for us, his desire to show us a glimpse of God, and with the crucifixion and resurrection, to save our souls from eternal damnation. Like, he loved us so much, he does not want to be separated from us. And so it was fine that he knew he would be rejected by people here because he wanted to offer the gift of connection eternally.
That's great.
You know?
Yes. I think about also, and I mean, you and I have talked about this, not on here, but so much of church culture is information.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that was a good talk. Oh, that was a good lecture. Oh, that was good. Oh, now I know the root word of blah, 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 you know? And when you look at what Christ did, I mean, walking with people, having those hard conversations, just being there, really having that right side of the brain connecting so that that relationship's there, so then you can share the truth, so that those conversations do happen. Yeah. And I know for me, that's something I really care about in the church, is just making sure great theology. We want to have good teaching, but also that there's actually a format to have the hard conversations, to confess, to say what's really going on.
And I think it's becoming more popular in conversation is the 12-step communities. Right. So whereas we put those in the bucket of that's for alcoholics, that's for addicts, that's for people really struggling. Yeah. We don't need that. But what you find in those communities is this, everyone's bought in to being real. We're all showing up. They say their name and they're saying their struggle. You know, that classic stand up. Yes. Hi, my name's Heather, and I struggle with control issues, or I struggle with fearing and wanting your approval. I mean, if I go first and say it like they do in that community, then it invites you into the same thing. Yes. It invites you to that same level. Okay. And if someone's not willing, you have to question what's going on with them. It's not about you. Right. So all those times that you've tried, it's not about you. Right. It's, you know, that you're not their flavor and they need a different restaurant, you know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I understand. For sure. My supervisor in counseling used to say this, and it was so good. It's a 2 out of 10 rule. And we haven't talked about this, but it's 2 out of 10 people are going to like you no matter what you do. Like, that's just kind of like us. Like, we just instantly connected. Yeah. And then it's 2 out of 10 aren't going to like you. And it has nothing to do with you. Yeah. You remind them of their mom. You remind them of their ex-girlfriend.
Their own issue.
You know, they just their friend they had a friend break up with, and then 6 out of 10 can kind of take you or leave you. And he was saying, I personally don't struggle with people pleasing. I probably should care a little more. But I do, rejection is hard for everybody. And he was just saying, he taught us that a lot of times we focus a lot on the people that really don't like us, can take us or leave us. We focus on that instead of Jesus' model of friendship. He had the 3 people that were closest to him, Peter, James, and John.
Yeah.
He had that outer group, of course, that still was the inner group of the disciples. But those were the people that really spoke into his life and that he shared his emotions with. And then he had the group that he influenced. Yeah. And I thought that was, it's just so neat to think there are people that you're naturally going to connect with. And if you can have those safe relationships with those people instead of trying to figure out why other people don't like you or you can't connect with, I think that saves a lot.
Or taking it personally, that there's something wrong with you.
Right.
And putting so much energy into that. Mm-hmm. It steals you from being a blessing to the people around you.
I want you to talk about how to be a safe person. That was a big part of your talk, and I really appreciate that you talk about that. And I want you to tell us what to do.
I think it was going through the 12-step and seeing, I have good friends. My friend Amber is really good modeling this in our group. And then we've had actual professional processors that lead us in processing, and they've modeled it. And a lot of it is listening. I mean, we know this. This is not rare information. But I think listening from a heart posture instead of a head posture. So again, with Jesus, he wasn't coming in with correcting their theology as often as he was seeing their need for God.
Right.
And so if someone's sharing something with you, connecting with what they're feeling, what's it doing in you? What's it bringing up in you? Are you paying attention? Are you starting to feel scared as they're talking? Are you feeling sad as they're talking, and kind of paying attention so you connect there instead of the thinking part of you that's, I got to figure out what I'm going to say next.
Right.
Or I'm going to give them a solution. They didn't ask for a solution. So listening from a heart posture, I think, is helpful. Even just giving quiet space so they share, and then you just sit awkwardly.
Yes.
And see if God prompts them to say something else, the Holy Spirit in them. And then I would say it's not giving that advice, but just in our official processing groups, we have a needs card. So that's helpful because it gives choices, like a menu of needs. So often it's hard to say, well, what do you need from me? They're
like, I don't know.
Yeah, it can feel
Starbucks?
Overwhelming to some. Yeah, and then it can feel dismissive. Like, well, what do you need from me? No, it's from a position of how can I help you?
Right.
Or what can I do with you right now?
Right.
And sometimes it's just holding that space and containing it. Sometimes it's identifying, like, have you ever been through something like that? And sharing your vulnerable thing. Right. Sometimes they really do need advice or, a constructive solution of some kind. But in general, I think for parenting, most parents would prefer you identify with their challenge than give them any instructions,
Right. Yes. I was thinking about, we talk about this a lot, and you mentioned it, of saying how you're feeling. So we've talked about this with parents just because we've worked with teenagers for about 12 years. And of course, when someone's dating someone that your child's dating someone, you're like, it's not who you want them to be dating, but even saying how you feel like this scares me because fill in the blank instead of, you shouldn't be doing this. Don't you know? Don't you remember when we took you to the true love ways? Just kind of like what's wrong with you instead of, I just think that's such an easy way to connect is to say, and you mentioned it, how it affects you. So this scares me, you're making this choice, this makes me sad. Just very practically, that's a really easy bridge. And I know that you know this, but for listeners, a lot of parenting's done in your left brain. A lot of talking, a lot of it's logical and it's theological, and it's the right brain that connects, and that's when we use the feeling words about how and that's what you were mentioning with the processing.
And so much of my parenting journey was getting in tune with, okay, I'm making this about my kids and their behavior, but really what's going on with me that I need them to behave?
Yeah.
What's going on with me that I need other people's approval, or I'm terrified that I'll be rejected, or this fear of failing in motherhood.
So what do we do with that?
We have to clue into it, because anger is, a secondary emotion to fear often. And we're seeing that all over the globe right now. People have pain from the last year. They have guilt maybe, or shame, or anger that is, coming from fear.
Right.
And no one's agreeing with their way. And so it's coming out as anger and unkindness and division. It also comes out in our parenting of, you yell and then you feel guilt. And on the shoulders of guilt is shame. And you're laying in bed with this monologue of I am wrong because I did something that was wrong, instead of I did something wrong.
Yep.
I can make it right.
Yeah.
I can figure out what's going on in me. I can come up with some new strategies. I am not wrong because Christ took on the shame on the cross.
Right.
But we have to, I think it was Dr. Kurt Thompson. He talks about combating shame in community. And so it's being in that group of people and sharing those feelings of this happened with my kid. And I feel like a horrible mom, or I feel like a horrible dad. And having your friends say, oh my goodness, I have had that. I have made that mistake.
Yeah.
You are a great person. You are a great mom. And just seeing you and coming after you, like God did in the garden with Adam and Eve when they were hiding in shame for their choice. They did something wrong.
Right.
They went against his way and did their way. But then they hid, and he came after them. And Jesus comes after us. And so when we have mom friends, to pursue them, to ask them how they're feeling. If they start sharing something about their kids or some event, and you say, well, wow, I can imagine how I'd feel in that situation. How did that make you feel? And invite them into that.
Right.
Is a really helpful phrase to use.
Right.
Because they may be disconnecting, like you said, the thinking from the feeling, and fear is right there, but it's coming out in all of these strategies to fix it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so good. So I still haven't told you the story.
Oh, I thought you did.
No, because I'm all over the place. So because so many of my friends were sitting there listening to you talk about that all week, this whole week, it's been a completely different shift in our group. And we were, I'm not going to tell the whole story because I didn't ask permission, but we were at something very generic, not spiritual at all. And because we had all heard from you on Friday, someone shared something and just immediately, like, we were feeling, and most people were crying, and it was like this really
oh my
great
gosh, that makes me so happy.
And it was because we had all heard you say that, and so it just gave permission. And so I know you mentioned one thing that someone did with your podcast is passing around, sending out a podcast so that everybody could listen to that episode and then talk about it. And it started a conversation with my friends of, we want to be using the same language, we want to be parenting the same way. And so that's just a really easy fix, in my opinion, of thankfully we live in 2021 and we all have access to basically everything that can be bad and good. But if the people that you connect with better aren't necessarily at your church or at your school, but you have found them, like, that's an easy way. Sharing a podcast, sharing a message, and then
we call them podcast clubs.
Okay, so tell us about that.
You can sign up and get support from us, or you could just do it. I mean, it doesn't cost anything. It's just if someone wants to lead a group, we have a Facebook group, and I'll put questions in there even that my VA writes. And so every week we have questions available to podcast club leaders, and you can choose. It could be 2 people.
So it's on Facebook.
Yeah, well, you can go to my website, don'tmomalone.com, and then click join, and you just put in your email address, and you get connected with those resources.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And we have a guide, too. We have a guide for leaders if you've never led a group and you're being really brave, because being vulnerable is really brave. Going first is really brave, and I think inviting people to a group is really brave. And so it might be the easiest time now.
Right.
It was really hard. I remember a gal reaching out. She invited people. She bought cupcakes and cookies, and no one showed up.
Right.
But her husband was celebrating because she tried.
Mm-hmm.
And people were ridiculously overscheduled
Yes.
prior to the pandemic.
Definitely.
And so I think they're a little more open.
Mm-hmm.
So it might be a good time to take the risk.
Yes, I definitely
Yeah.
think so. I think that it was a lot of permission to slow down and to realize what your family needs. And definitely, this is not what we were going to talk about, but it's definitely, I've just seen a balance of realizing, okay, maybe things were out of whack, but also, I don't know if you've seen this with different mom communities, sometimes, I'm going to phrase this right, but then almost putting family first.
Like an idol.
Yes. Like, okay, we're not going to go to church because we need to chill.
Yeah.
Or we're, I can't
Their nap
serve.
time. Yeah.
Right. And so what do you think, what do you say to that?
With a lot of parenting things, it's often the heart that the mom can only evaluate with
Right.
her God.
Right.
The God.
Right.
Her God.
Yeah.
I'm not that person, but
The only one.
The only God. There's one true God, Yahweh. I am. But she needs to spend time with him and figure out, because I think this is in my book about the mom brand. I think sometimes we judge other moms for their choices, and it's us taking our own journey and process and where God has us and applying it to a different mom. And that's not fair to her, because just maybe she loves planning parties and she's really good at it. Or, maybe there's something going on in her family we don't know about.
Right.
And that was going on with a friend of mine whose spouse had an affair. And so mom night outs were not an option for her for a while because her husband really wanted to be with her at the end of the day. And it helped him to make right choices, and it just was good for their family. So I can't judge that. It may not be that she's making it an idol, but I think we do as moms, if that is you, have to consider, am I finding my identity and worth in this role?
Right.
And so I am not listening to God on what he has for me. If it's, I don't know, I'm a big fan of church community. I'm a big fan of the local church. I think church hopping in Dallas particularly is, I have a lot of words about it, but
Oh, go ahead and share them. No, really, because
I really
it's so
think it matters to
easy
show
do
up.
that. Yes.
I think it matters to show up. It was a friend of ours who's now serving in East Asia who went to DTS, and it was one of his first professors he had, and he said, Dallas has a plethora, and I'm sure there's a lot of cities out there that have a plethora of choices. Really solid, biblically based, well-staffed.
We got great options here.
No one's sinning publicly, like really great choices. You could go to a different one every weekend, your entire time at DTS, and be filled with good teaching. He said, but don't do that.
Good.
Pick one, get plugged in, get connected, find a group of people that you get to know, that you live life alongside. I mean, those are our people right now.
Right.
The ones that we met prior to even getting pregnant, they walk alongside us still. We are walking through the loss of parents, cancer, all the things. And, it's not perfect. And we haven't left when our kids don't like the children's ministry.
What do you do? I'm serious.
We actually had a season where we had some friends leave, and I don't judge. They had their own path. I'm not judging their path. But for us in that, we weren't feeling the same. Our kids weren't complaining necessarily about that. They have sense, and I just don't see them as good reviewers of anything.
Wow.
They're going to say they don't like
But
school
what if
one
all
day.
their friends go to another church?
They do. That happens all the time. We have invited them to serve. So there was a season where a couple of our kids maybe didn't enjoy the Sunday school. Maybe their teacher they didn't click with, or whoever it was. I mean, these are volunteers. These aren't paid staff.
Right.
And
well, everyone doesn't click with the paid staff either. So
well, we just said, I wonder, there was a mentor of mine, actually a mentor of mine, and she served in a 4-year-old class, and she said, I'd love to have them help me. And so here they are, 9 and 10 years old, helping out with the 4-year-olds, and it actually built something in them that they felt equipped and empowered to be a part of the body. They weren't complaining to go. It just got us through a season of years. And I really feel like it modeled for them, you have gifts that can be used to build God's kingdom. And I don't know. I'm just a big fan of finding a place. It is not perfect this side of heaven, ever.
Right.
The body.
Right. You're not going to
Bunch
find
of
the
sinners.
perfect church. I know.
Bunch of sinners leading sinners is
Right.
a mess. And yes, we need accountability, and that's all good. And I think, and we can switch churches. That's okay too. If God is growing you and you are not being fed.
Right.
If something in your personal walk with Jesus, I've seen that too, where that's not happening. But
yeah, we're on the same page. I think it's
Okay.
also a little bit of the like spectator sport versus participant. I mean, there's a huge, I think of it with online dating.
Yeah.
So like my husband and I met when we were 14. I
Okay.
think, I truly believe there's some kind of, somebody do a study on this, some kind of psychology behind these are the people you grow up with. This is, I mean,
Yeah.
who you have to choose from. Like I cannot imagine. I mean, we didn't grow up with online dating. It's like, how would you ever choose?
it's
I
like
mean, you
the
have every
cereal.
option.
It's the cereal aisle. It's
just-
choice paralysis.
Right.
It becomes.
Right.
Yeah, I think that happens with schooling. We were talking about
Yes.
that, the public, private,
Yes.
or what are the other options? Homeschooling. Yeah.
Homeschooling.
There's so many
cohort.
choices in Dallas.
Right.
That it becomes paralyzing.
Right.
And we are fed the false belief that I will make the wrong choice. Same with the spouse.
Yes.
Same with the church. As if God is not bigger
Right.
than any of these things, or as if our parents didn't go to whatever school was around the corner and become successful people, or like
Yes.
in that room of mops where I said,
Right.
I mean, all the different places we came from, it wasn't the most elite Dallas school that
Right.
got us in the same room.
Mm-hmm. And we're all here.
It's not
and we
like
all
one
care.
of you is
Yeah.
a president and I'm, teaching at mops. It's not like
Yes.
it caused success for one and not for the other.
Right.
There's
and
a variety
my
of
husband and I
stories.
talk about it a lot because we broke up all the time. Because we started dating when we were 14. And we're like, so here's everybody just be a little more free to realize you can keep making the wrong choices and God is still sovereign.
Yeah.
Because we talk about that a lot. We're like, well, I mean, we were with the right person and we kept breaking up. But
Yeah.
like that was still
Yeah.
God's
Or is there
plan.
this ideal? So this
Right.
lie we can believe in
Right.
marriage that if I was with the right person, this wouldn't be hard.
Oh,
That's kind of fed
I'm
in.
sorry for anyone that's believing that. It's
Yeah.
all hard.
Or if I'm not happy.
Oh, yes. If
this
I'm not
is-
happy, then
this-
something's wrong.
Then something's
Right.
wrong. And that's literally the Ted Lasso episode where his wife, that's what.
I don't watch that.
Well,
But Heather likes
yeah, I
it.
do
No,
like
I'm
the
just
show.
kidding.
I just think that often in, TV shows or whatever, even books, the storyline is,
Right.
if I'm not happy, then the marriage is over. And it's different.
Yes.
I mean, I have lots of friends that have walked through divorce, and it is so painful. I have family members. I'm not one of those people who's like, divorce is the worst evil
Right.
ever. I just
Right.
think the idea that if my kids aren't happy, we need to switch schools. If we're not happy at a church, we need to switch churches. If I need to.
Yes.
If you stay with people, you walk through the hard. I think even when you're having conflict with a friend, this happened during COVID. I don't know if this happened with you, where you're
My
spending.
best friend moved during COVID,
Okay.
so that was my
so
friend. That was
sorry.
my friendship.
I'm so sorry.
If you're listening, you know who you are.
Oh, I just think that we are all not our best versions.
Right.
So the potential for conflict was pretty high. And so I've had that with friends, and I got really good language from someone else. They said, just invite them to dinner and say, the way I'm experiencing you.
Yep.
And how are you
I love that phrase.
experiencing me? It opened up really good conversation. We were able to get back to what our relationship was before.
I do want to say to the point that we talked about earlier, some people are not there. Like some people don't even know how to have
And
that
I knew this
conversation.
friend was.
So it has to be,
Yes,
you know.
I knew this friend was,
Right.
and then
Right.
I cared. The other thing is, my word is carefrontation.
Oh.
From college. That's how they trained us
Nice.
to talk about it. Carefrontation.
Okay.
So if you're confronting someone, it's from a position of care and love. My desire is to reconcile a relationship. If my desire is to come in and tell them how they're wrong and not to restore the
Maybe
relationship,
keep that to yourself.
maybe keep it to yourself. Or, they may not be ready. You can
Yes.
tell. But if you can tell that they really desire to stay in relationship with you and you really desire that too, it's worth the risk to say, I love you enough to let you know that how I'm experiencing you is hurtful.
Right.
This is not how I think you want others to relate to you. I know that you have love and care in your heart, and I wouldn't be here without you. You know, letting them know how valuable they are to you.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's definitely, I think also deciding if it's someone that can receive it.
Yes.
Definitely.
There's wisdom and discernment there.
Good.
I think praying about it for a good long while, maybe talking to your husband about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
They always used to talk about, when I was in school for counseling, like limiting abuse, like putting a limit on abuse. And I think like a lot of people hear that and they think hitting or some, you know,
a physical
abuse. But in my mind, like something I've experienced is even just the covert shaming or passive aggressiveness that makes it hard for you to fulfill your calling, or makes it hard for you to fulfill your
they're
ministry.
not for
there
you.
There has to be some, you know, we just kind of decided a while ago we're not going to keep chasing people that God's trying to take out of our lives. And it's not that we don't try to reconcile or try to heal, but I mean, sometimes in Romans, you know, as much as it depends on you, and then at some point, someone else has to.
Well, and that's advice I give even to my kids. If a relationship turns sour, I think it's not necessarily even a rejection. It's just a redirection.
Right.
Or, another word that ends in shun, protection.
Right.
It's
absolutely.
Protection from, you know, maybe that friend
Another
group's.
episode.
Yeah. That friend group's not
absolutely.
leading you down a good path, or that is harming your ministry or harming your soul.
Right.
You know, for the enemy to come in and disrupt what you're doing.
Yes.
He loves
totally
the D's.
Switching gears. Why is motherhood so lonely, and what can we do about it? Well, I mean, what do you, obviously you've really studied this. And
why is motherhood so lonely?
What is it that makes it so?
You know, for me, because I can only speak about my experience, I think I was around people. So I'm a very social extrovert. So we would do the play dates and things. But I didn't let people into the hard parts or where I was struggling, because I wanted to keep up the image of perfection. And
oh my gosh, will you tell your British story?
Oh gosh,
that's like my favorite story.
Let them be a jerk. Yeah, that's for chapter 1. We were at the Arboretum, which, you know, with the pumpkins. Yeah, and I was going to take the perfect picture, and I didn't go with anyone because I just didn't want to coordinate all the things. So I go there, and I'm totally struggling with a newborn who wanted to be fed, a toddler who was done, D-U-N, and my church's MOPS group, which I wasn't a part of at the time because I didn't understand that I could be, were there at this on the same day. And one of the mentors, she saw me struggling, and she offered help, and I did the mom lie of, I'm fine, which again is part of the loneliness. We don't accept the help that's extended to us because it makes us feel like we're inadequate or bad moms if we don't have enough in us to do it all.
Okay.
Which, when you have triplets, I think the gift of that is it's automatic. I cannot do this by myself. It's built into.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, never. That was not.
But there's something about like when you add a singleton one at a time, you're like, I'm capable. Other people do it. They've done it for centuries. What's wrong with me if it's hard? You know, then you can't handle it. So if you accept help, so she offered help, and I said, no, I'm fine. And then she wisely, in her British accent, said, does the toddler have a snack? And I was like, that's so smart. He needs a snack. That would keep him very occupied while I fed his brother. And, she, you know, I get it out of the bag and I hand it to her, and she offers it to him. And he, full body, grumpy voice, turns away and says, no. And I am mortified. Yeah. I said, I'm so sorry. And I'm giving all the excuses like we do as moms. You know, he's ready for his nap. He needs lunch. It's hot out here. It's probably 90 in October or something. And the hay's itchy. I don't know. And he's teething. something. Yeah. And she says, dead into my eyes, should I look in the camera so the moms feel it?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay. Oh, almost. Okay, you ready? I've got my accent ready. Why, as mothers, do we feel like we need to apologize for our children? If he wants to be a jerk, let him be a jerk. And I'm like crying. Oh, I didn't let him be a jerk. I'm like over apologizing. I did something else wrong, you know. And yeah, I think so much of my early mom years of loneliness, because it's a perceived state. You can be surrounded by people and lonely, you know.
Yes,
it's I didn't want to let people in.
Right.
I'll let you come in my house. I'll let you sit on my couch. But into my inner thoughts and what's going on in here, that didn't happen until probably 5 years ago.
So I just want to share my opposite experience of that.
Okay.
Because as a counselor, I was totally open. I was
Okay.
like, this is what I'm struggling with. This is how I feel. This is what I need. And it kept being, those conversations kept happening with people who couldn't receive it. Like they didn't know about vulnerability. They didn't know about community. And so I just needed to pray. Like I have very specific times in my life where I said, God, I am so lonely.
Yeah.
And I know that you're enough, and thankfully Ryan's my best friend, and like I have great parents and everything, but I was like, I am so lonely. And I just want to say, like, it's okay to tell God that. And it's not, some people are like, well, isn't Jesus enough? Like, yeah, but sometimes I want to go to North Park with someone. Like, so I think that it's really special to tell God how you feel. And I'm not kidding. I can point to 3 different times. It's like someone was just heaven sent and fell out of the sky. And it was like I had just been praying for someone that would come into my life that's doing what I'm doing. And then we randomly met. Yeah. And so I just want to say, like, sometimes people are open and you just have to keep looking and doing that. But I know that's not necessarily the norm. But that's kind of why I love the risk rejection, because it was just keep going. And I love, I remember hearing this is so funny that God had me do all of these child development courses. I didn't have kids. I'd never babysat. I was like, but I remember hearing that when you have little kids, that's basically no one's favorite time in their marriage. And so, I mean, just across the board. And so if you have the idea, no, I'm supposed to be happy, I'm supposed to be enjoying this, instead of just, actually, research shows this is when most people are like least satisfied in marriage, it just takes the pressure off. It's like, it's hard when someone's crying 24/7. I mean, like, that's hard.
Don't make it be something it's not meant to be. Yeah.
And so it was just kind of like, Ryan and our kids are just hilarious and so much fun, but we're like, it's hard right now. Like, we were married for 7 years and we could do basically whatever we wanted to do and could go to a movie at 10 o'clock at night. And it's okay, but it's not always going to be like this. Yeah. And just realizing, like what you said, like permission to feel. Yeah. Like, it's okay to be sad. It's okay to be frustrated. But then what do we do with that?
I watched with one of my siblings, their marriage actually, and around that time, because of that lie that I'm not happy, and they didn't have community who were saying, this season is hard, because that's another, inviting other couples into your story and being vulnerable with them of, man, we just had a fight on the way over here. I mean, we have so many friends that we've, like, they've shared with us, we've shared with them. And if we didn't, I grieve for my sibling because they didn't have that. And so it's, we must be wrong because this is hard.
So let's like reverse this a little bit. How do you enter into someone's life? Like, I was thinking about someone I know that's like, was really struggling. And so like, I just kept kind of like, I'm here, and just so you know, like, I know this is hard and I see you. And I mean, do you ever kind of reverse it? We've talked a lot about basically getting our needs met, but at what point you say something really great about, is it height, width? Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Nope.
Okay.
No clue.
Well, so, I mean, I literally took like 4 pages of notes. So
like, are you talking about like the different relationships
like
you have?
Someone should always be above you.
Yes. Yeah. Someone who's a step ahead, someone who's alongside, and someone who's a step behind.
Yeah, it's not beneath.
Beneath you. Someone beneath you.
That's not what I meant. But that was a neat model.
Yeah, I think our church has done that really well. That there were women available who were reaching out. But I also think when you see someone to offer yourself, and they may not be ready for it, and that's okay. But inviting them into that, like, hey, would you love to? I'd love to go to coffee with you.
Yes.
Or that woman at the Arboretum, she literally said, do you have anyone who's, and my mom wasn't living here, my mother-in-law wasn't, and so she kind of opened the door in my mind that that's a position I need filled.
Yes.
A job
Right.
opportunity. So I need that for me. But if you are that person, don't let your pain be wasted. So whatever, there's a mom who's pregnant with triplets.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's a little side ministry.
That's
of
a little
mine. It's
side
not
ministry.
official, but
No.
Oh, yeah, no. So many of my friends, I've seen them in the parking lot, and they have multiples. I'm like, hey, you're doing a great job. It gets easier. And they're like, oh, my gosh. But, like, now we're friends.
Now
so,
you're friends.
yeah, because
Yes.
it was just, a lot of the advice that you hear, like, I really tried to connect, and a lot of the things I heard just didn't apply.
Yeah.
It was just different. I mean, same for like special needs, it was just different. And so it was, but that is something like literally across the parking lot, I had this situation, and I could tell that they were struggling, and someone was watching my kids, and I was like, I'm a mom of multiples. I know, like, let's just be friends.
Yes.
And just inviting them
It's
in.
seeing the person.
Right.
I mean, your story reminds me of a gal who she hosts podcast clubs in Capel.
Uh-huh.
And she was telling the story that she was walking with her kids, and across the street, she could hear a mom pushing a stroller was listening to my podcast. I was like, how did you even notice that? She saw her with a baby. She went across the street, and she invited her to a podcast club. I'm talking about, I haven't taken that risk, and it's my show.
Yes.
But she saw her, she invited her. You don't, whether they accept your invitation is on their end.
Right.
But if we would see people,
Yes.
Yes.
Fantastic advice.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's something I want to make sure we talk about.
Okay.
And it's, I just know
Okay.
that some people react to the idea of needing to be vulnerable and having community because that's not really what church is for.
Okay.
And people just we need to address the sin. We need to hear good teaching. We need to, what is the biblical basis for community and vulnerability, and why it's not separate. You and I believe that, but let's actually prove it.
Yeah. So I think it looks more like the early church than probably what our churches look like now. They weren't in theaters. There weren't rows.
There's great preaching and teaching from the disciples.
Straight up.
Sure. Yeah.
From Jesus to the disciples. And they were probably getting more teaching than we do now.
Right.
Because it was happening in the moment. You have that conflict with a friend. Someone's right there.
Can you imagine Jesus sitting there being like, that is not how you should have handled
Jesus,
that.
or he probably wouldn't. He would just graciously walk them through it. And I think it was, like I'm saying, all those verses, the one another. Do this with one another, one another, one another, one another. That was the lifestyle. And so when you live your messy life, which we all have, and then you show up all polished on Sunday, and the most pressure on moms is to look perfect on Sunday, which is ridiculous because we all need to be there because we sin. So how do you deal with sin if everyone's keeping up the facade that I have nothing going wrong in my life, or nothing's hard right now for me? So if, going back to the recovery, the 12-step, the way that they overcome the sin in their life is to be honest and say, I have this sin, and they confess to each other, which is over and over in Scripture. Confess to one another.
And there has to actually be a time where you can do that.
There has to be a space for that.
Right.
And there has to be a safe space, like we were talking about. This isn't go on Facebook and confess all my sins to all the people.
Some people do.
Some people do it. But I don't think that's what Jesus is talking about. And it's with people who are going to preach the gospel back to you about how that sin has been dealt with, and it doesn't change God's view of you because he sees you through Christ. So we need those people, and we wouldn't need Jesus if we were perfect.
Right.
So we keep pretending as churchgoers that we're perfect, but that's not living out the gospel. And I don't believe the church is about more knowledge. The church original intention was to see the fulfillment of the Old Testament through Christ, remind people that they don't have to keep the law.
Right.
And to keep spreading that message. The good news is I don't have to keep the law to be right with God.
Right.
What we've flipped it. We aren't doing New Testament parenting. We're doing Old Testament parenting.
Oh.
We are doing follow the rules so you can be right with God. Not the rules have been fulfilled through Christ. He fulfilled the law. I am right with God. So now I'm motivated to keep the rules.
Okay, so we need to talk about that because so what do you do when your kids aren't saved yet? So like how
No.
how much would you talk about?
I'm not talking
God
about
doesn't want you to like let's just be real practical.
Yeah.
So God wants you to obey your parents. Well, they're not Christians yet. So like I mean really, truthfully. So how much of that do we use? Are we supposed to use that language?
I think honestly, with kids under the age of 3, we are using too much church talk.
Okay.
I think under the age of 3, love, care, safety.
Someone asked me, how do you get them to, what did they say? What do you do to discipline? I was like, well, there's 3 2-year-olds, so I'm not going to get too upset about it.
I think we rob the relationship.
Right.
Jesus walked with people, the trust, the building. We walk with, I think so much of, if I had regrets, it would be over doing it when they were little. I think I still preach the gospel on, my mistakes and model that for them. But I have to show them we are keeping the rules not to make us right with God. That was Paul's message to the Jews at the time was, y'all keep thinking these new believers have to be circumcised to be righteous. No. The whole point is Jesus kept the whole law.
Right.
So if we do that with our kids, you better behave, you better obey, you better do this so that I love you, or so that, we don't say that, but we imply that with the performance.
Right.
It's, no, you are so loved.
Right.
Christ died for you. You are right with God. And because of all he's done, we respond this way. This is how we respond to it. So it's like a flipping.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying about Old Testament, New Testament.
Okay, got it.
It was, God loves us. I want to be right with him. I got to keep the law. Nope. God loves us. Christ kept the law. Now I'm motivated to follow him.
And then if your kids don't have a personal relationship with Christ,
you're modeling it.
Okay.
It's an unbeliever in your home.
Right.
You wouldn't require an unbeliever to keep the law.
Right.
Or be motivated to keep the law.
Okay.
It's like sometimes as Christians, we talk to the world as if it's inside the church conversations. I'm like, I wouldn't expect an unbeliever. They're not.
So would you discipline not using church wording, or I
think we use the word discipline, and discipline is, I think, let's call it discipleship.
Yeah.
So I am inviting them into this relationship with Jesus, and so they're gonna, from all the child development, there's gonna be foolishness wrapped up in a child, and they're gonna make mistakes, and so obviously we want to keep them safe. We want to redirect them. Most of 0 to 3 is redirection.
Right. Yes.
Like you go outside. We had a very busy front yard. You say,
we can't go in the front yard.
You say, don't go past the sidewalk, or we're gonna have to go inside. So the discipline is the consequence of you go to the sidewalk, you go past the sidewalk, we go inside.
Right.
It's not because of we're not over spiritualizing it. There's a boundary line.
Yes.
And you go inside.
Okay, very good.
And you keep them. We used to say alive till 5.
Right. I know.
But they can handle deep theological conversations. I think all of my boys professed faith around 4.
Yeah.
They can do that. They grasp the gospel if you are modeling the gospel. And then you get the bonus of the Holy Spirit in them. And there's no junior Holy Spirit.
Okay, I don't know if this is going to make it in here, but our kids started talking about ghostesses.
Yeah.
And I'm scared of ghostesses.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, well, we don't believe in ghosts because we're a Christian family. They go, are we Christians? No, but Mom and Dad are, and I'm scared of ghostesses. I just have to tell you that story. I'm not, but it was funny because it was such a funny thing because we're explaining we're Christians, so we don't believe in this because of this. But then it was like, but we're not. It's like,
but I would say, but see, I would handle it because people used to say the Holy Ghost.
Yeah.
I think where people are tapping into with ghosts is a spiritual realm.
Yeah.
And we do believe in the Holy Spirit.
They were copying a Paw Patrol episode.
100%. But I think it's a great opportunity to say we do believe in a spiritual realm. And Jesus came from the spiritual realm of heaven to be with us. And there is a real enemy in the spiritual realm. And of course, that's what Halloween is, this evil. And it's the ghosts. Anyway. I think
that's what we do. That's what we do with
Yeah.
Santa. So since Santa Claus, St. Nicholas was a pastor, like we're
Yeah.
like, okay, so Santa isn't real, but there really was
A
a
Saint Nicholas,
Christian
yeah.
who cared about poor people
And you can bring
reached
in the
out.
gospel to be about.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, that he expects you to be good to
Uh-huh.
bring you gifts. And
Uh-huh.
Jesus came because you weren't good.
Right.
The gift was
Yeah.
Jesus, which is what we celebrate. So you can, I mean,
There's so many ways to
it can
redirect.
fit
It's
in
great.
without it being this,
Right.
I don't know,
Right.
Old Testament style.
Interesting. That's so good.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Yeah, I think using their wording and using their
Following their lead.
Paw Patrol episodes
Yes.
and all
Yes,
of that
their
is
questions.
so cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so how you've mentioned it several times, but you have such a wonderful podcast and you have such a wonderful ministry, and I mean, so many of us have been so touched by it and helped with it. But we need to support your book coming out.
Oh, you're so
can you
sweet.
tell us
Okay.
how can we get Don't Mom Alone out in the world and to our friends and make
Oh.
sure that people have it?
You could go to don'tmomalone.com/book
Mm-hmm.
right now, and it shows all the places you can buy it.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay.
And tell your friends. And there are questions at the end of each chapter.
Mm-hmm.
I recorded an audiobook, so you could listen to a chapter and then discuss with friends.
Right. That's
an
great.
opportunity.
Okay, and how do people stay connected to you?
Don't Mom Alone, all the things. Instagram, Facebook, website.
Great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for being
Oh,
here today.
thank you for
You're
having
fantastic.
me.
Could talk to you for hours.
Oh, I know.
We're gonna
I know. I have no idea what time it is.
I know. I don't know either, but you're such a joy and such an
Oh.
encouragement, and we all benefit so much from your wisdom. So thank you.
Thank you, Julia.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of Unapologetic with Heather MacFadyen from Don't Mom Alone. Make sure to check out her books, her podcast, and I would love to connect with you further. You can check out today's episode and all others at ptv.org/Julia and wherever you get your podcasts.